Chocolate chip cookies. The most famous cooking mistake in history happened in 1938 at the Toll House Inn in Massachusetts. Ruth Wakefield was making chocolate cookies and chopped up a Nestlé semi-sweet chocolate bar, expecting it to melt completely and blend into the dough. It didn't. The chunks stayed intact, creating something entirely new. Nestlé loved the idea so much, they bought the rights to her recipe. Ruth's compensation was a lifetime supply of chocolate, while Nestlé printed her recipe on every single bag. Americans now consume over 7 billion chocolate chip cookies annually. Oreos. The best-selling cookie of all time launched in 1912 by Nabisco. Interestingly, a similar cookie called Hydrox had already been on the market since 1908, but Oreos became the household name that dominated. Over 450 billion Oreos have been sold since creation, and different countries have developed wildly different flavors. China alone has over 50 varieties. Nobody knows what the name Oreo actually means. The word has no confirmed origin despite decades of speculation. The twist, lick, and dunk eating method was never officially promoted by Nabisco, just something people started doing on their own. Snickerdoodles. Nobody knows where this delightfully ridiculous name comes from. These cinnamon sugar-coated cookies showed up in New England by the 1800s, probably brought by German or Dutch immigrants. One theory suggests Snickerdoodle is a corruption of Schneckennoodle, a German word meaning snail noodle. Another theory is that it's simply whimsical nonsense from bakers who thought the name sounded fun. The real secret is the cream of tartar, which creates that signature tangy flavor and crackled surface texture. After over 200 years, the etymology mystery remains completely unsolved. Fortune cookies. These aren't Chinese at all. They're Japanese, invented in California. Makoto Hagiwara created them in San Francisco in the early 1900s for his Japanese tea garden. Chinese. Restaurants later adopted these cookies, and they became associated with Chinese cuisine instead. Here's the fascinating part. China now imports fortune cookies from America because they weren't part of traditional Chinese culture. Japan barely knows they exist today. China considers them American. America thinks they're Chinese. 3 billion are made annually, almost entirely in the United States. Macarons. Not to be confused with macaroons, these delicate sandwich cookies require precision and patience. Catherine de' Medici brought them from Italy to France in 1533 when she married the French king. The fancy Parisian version was popularized by Ladurée in the 1930s. Making them requires aging egg whites for 24 to 48 hours and maintaining an exact oven temperature of 300 degrees. 1 degree too hot, and they crack. 1 degree too cool, and they won't rise. Humidity above 50% can ruin an entire batch. The frilly edge called the foot indicates perfect technique. Biscotti, baked twice, which is literally what the name means in Italian. Ancient Romans made biscoctus, meaning twice cooked, and gave them to soldiers and sailors, because they lasted for months without spoiling. Christopher Columbus carried biscotti on his 1492 voyage across the Atlantic. The second baking removes all moisture, allowing them to last 4 to 6 months. The coffee dunking tradition started in Tuscan cafes in the 1800s. Biscotti nearly faded into obscurity until the American coffee shop boom in the 1980s brought them back. Stroopwafels, invented by a Dutch baker in Gouda around the 1780s using leftover breadcrumbs and scraps. 2 thin waffles sandwich a layer of caramel syrup filling. The traditional way to eat them is placing one on top of your hot coffee cup so the steam softens the caramel inside. They must be made fresh because the filling hardens as it cools. United Airlines started serving them in the 1990s and introduced them to millions of Americans. From humble beginnings to international delicacy. Macaroons. made with just 3 basic ingredients, yet they require careful technique. There are 2 main types, coconut macaroons and almond macaroons, which Italians call amaretti. Both originated in medieval monasteries across Europe in the 1500s. Italian Jewish bakers created versions that became especially important because they contain no flour or leavening, making them perfect for Passover observance. The key is that egg whites must reach stiff peaks, or the batch won't hold together. They share a name with French macarons, but are completely different cookies. Alfajores, brought by Moors to Spain around 800 AD, then transformed in South America. The name comes from Arabic al-hasu, meaning stuffed or filled. Spanish versions used honey filling, but South American bakers created new interpretations. Dulce de leche filling became the standard, sandwiched between cornstarch shortbread, sometimes rolled in coconut. A cookie that traveled 3 continents over 1,200 years. The cookies must be assembled within hours, or the dulce de leche soaks through. Different South American countries have developed their own beloved variations. Speculoos. These Belgian spiced cookies have been a St. Nicholas Day tradition since the 1600s. The name possibly comes from Latin speculum, meaning mirror, because dough was pressed into carved wooden molds. The spice blend includes cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, cardamom, and ginger. Airlines began serving them to travelers worldwide. Then, in 2009, cookie butter spread was created and became wildly popular. Lotus Bakeries now produces 6 billion cookies annually. From Belgian Christmas tradition to international treat. Fig Newtons, named after Newton, Massachusetts, not the scientist Isaac Newton. The Kennedy Biscuit Works created them in 1891. James Henry Mitchell invented the machine that extrudes fig paste inside cookie dough, revolutionizing food manufacturing. Before his invention, nobody could figure out how to get filling inside a cookie mechanically. His machine solved an engineering puzzle that had stumped others. They were originally marketed as a wholesome digestive aid rather than an indulgent treat, ginger snaps. These spiced cookies have a remarkably rich history in medieval Europe. Professional gingerbread guilds had exclusive baking rights in many cities, and ginger was an expensive spice imported from Asia. Some cookies made for nobility were beautifully decorated, even gilded with gold leaf. Queen Elizabeth I delighted guests in the 1500s by having gingerbread cookies made in their likenesses. Gingerbread fairs became beloved community events. Some medieval examples have been preserved in museums today. Girl Scout cookies. What started as a small fundraising idea in 1917 in Muskogee, Oklahoma, became an $800 million annual tradition. Thin mints remain the most popular variety, accounting for 25% of all sales. 2 different licensed bakers produce the cookies with slight variations. What one region calls Samoas, another calls caramel delights, depending on which baker serves your area. About 200 million boxes are sold annually, with proceeds supporting Girl Scout programs.